This new Titan build takes Arc to the next level. With this new build updated for Season of the Deep, we're going to be causing complete mayhem in all types of PvE content. Now I have two variants of this build today, and by that I mean we have two different exotics with minimal changes to the initial build design, which is going to specialise in completely different things. Our first variant is based on our super using the Cuirass of the Fallen Star to achieve the highest possible damage with our super that we can possibly get, and the second variant will be based on our melee with the Skullfort to literally just run around clapping everything like a true Thunder God, and we'll use the buffed Fist of Havoc super with that one. Now both variants will work the same way in terms of maintaining our abilities, so the only difference is the melee and the exotic armor. So everything else like the mods, artifact perks and fragments will pretty much be all the same with minimal changes. I prefer the Thundercrash route because just having that super for boss damage when playing solo is just awesome to have. But the second variant is pretty cool too, and it's just something fun and a little different to use, but it's something you'd use more in a little less aggressive game mode. Like you'll be aggressive, but you won't want to get completely melted in master content with it. But what makes this build even stronger this season compared to the last is that we now have a bunch of Arc perks in the seasonal artifact benefiting our Arc subclass, and I will go through that shortly in a video along with your alternative options if you don't have those two specific exotics for this build. So guys, if you like this one, then a rating is much appreciated, and perhaps subscribe so you don't miss out on my latest videos. But now let's dive straight into it. Now Arc Titans have always been really good, but this season they just got a lot better due to having new seasonal perks to enhance certain parts of the build. And like every season we get builds that become either weaker or stronger, which is why if you like this one then you might like some of my other builds for this season, the Season of the Deep, so be sure to check out that full playlist down below when you get a second, because you might just find your new favourite build. And I will be adding new builds to that playlist every week here on the channel. But with this one today, you're going to be getting faster Arc abilities, and generally with this setup that we have, you should be able to use those abilities quite frequently, regardless of where you use them. So you could use a pulse grenade on adds, or you could use them on bosses and champions, but actually if you use them on tougher enemies, you'll generate ionic traces, which is just going to give you that grenade back almost straight away. So it's kind of infinite abilities, depending where you use them, but it is better to use them in things like dungeons, raids, and higher end nightfalls. Now the second variant, you'll be able to use your melee infinitely to the point where everything just dies, and because of the aspect knockout, we'll be able to get health regeneration on every single melee kill, making us unkillable in certain activities. And since this season we now have a bunch of artifact perks for our Arc subclass, we're going to become even stronger regardless of which build variant path you go with. So the way you'll use this build for variant 1 is you'll start by using your melee ability to kill an add, which will then make you amplified, spawn an orb and give you armored charge. From here you'll just use your pulse grenade, use your thruster to speed up its recharge rate even more, and then you just run around killing adds with arc weapons, jolting them, chaining arc damage as well as using your abilities often, and you should keep refreshing the amplification buff quite a lot, which is what you want to do for a few reasons, which we'll get to shortly. This variant of the build is better to use in harder content, so things like a Grandmaster Nightfall or Master Dungeon, because the pulse grenade is better to use on adds where it's hitting them constantly, which just means most of the time you'll get that grenade back within seconds. For the second variant, you're going to do pretty much the same thing, but instead you're going to use the Thunderclap melee ability to kill adds. You'll then get all the same buffs and benefits as the first variant, but instead you're going to be infinitely using the melee, and this will get you your super stupidly fast, especially if you have a lot of yellow bar adds. And if adds are tough, you'll just charge up the shot by holding the melee charge a little longer before releasing, so you guarantee the kill or at least get high damage on them. Then once you have your super, you'll just use your Fist of Havoc for more ad clearing, but you can use the Thundercrash one with this setup too. I just thought I'd give this one a chance in PvE this season since it got buffed a little. You just won't have the Cuirass exotic for extra damage on the Thundercrash with this setup unless you change the exotic last minute. This one is better for solo content where you're alone and have a lot of adds, but the adds don't completely melt you instantly, so you guys can choose the variant you prefer and stick with it. And also let me know down below which one you prefer better, the Thundercrash one or the melee one. Now what's actually going on with this build here is when you melee an add to kill them, you'll get health but also become amplified because of the aspect knockout, and this is good for one main reason, and that's because of the new seasonal perk, Shock and All. Arc Final blows while you're amplified so many bursts of lightning that damages and jolts targets, and since we're using the fragment Spark of Ions, defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace, which means we can get more ability energy to our abilities, but also since we can rapidly defeat targets with arc damage, we'll be able to keep that amplified buff active at all times. So we just have that continuous loop of becoming amplified, jolting a target, getting our abilities back and then repeating, regardless of which variant of the build you use. And being amplified is really good for this build because our next seasonal perk is going to be the Amped Up, where we gain damage resistance while amplified, but not only that, we also have the electric armor so that we can stay amplified for longer, giving us more time to extend that buff. But also the Thunderous Retort, where we can get bonus arc super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified, which is just great. And since we're using the Thundercrash with the first variant, along with the Cuirass of the Fallen Star exotic, we'll get huge damage to bosses because Cuirass will greatly increase your Thundercrash impact damage, and the Thunderous Retort will stack up that damage bonus even further, making this season's Arc Supers so much better to use. If you're going with the second variant of this build, you might want to run the Fist of Havoc. This did get buffed, so you can now use the super for longer, and it does also have a 33% damage increase to PvE enemies as well. With that variant, you want to use the Skullfort exotic though, because what this does is trigger health regen and restore melee energy from arc melee abilities, so this paired with the Thunderclap is just brutal. So variant 1, run the T-Crash and any melee of your choice, and variant 2, run either T-Crash or the Fist of Havoc, but you'll want to ideally run the Thunderclap melee as well. Now both variants are being buffed massively because we're also running the Touch of Thunder aspect, where our grenades are enhanced. So for us that'll be pulse grenades, so they'll now create ionic traces as it damages targets and increasing damage over time. Great aspect to use, so make sure to throw on a pulse grenade. But what makes this even better is the artifact perk, the Lightning Strikes Twice, where after throwing an arc grenade you gain increased grenade recharge rate for a short time, and arc final blows extend their duration. So if you're on a killing spree with arc, you're pretty much going to have infinite grenades. It's harder to get infinite grenades when you're either playing in a team or you don't have many ads around, so this is an ad clearing ability build primarily, and you want to be running it when you have a lot of ads in the activity you're playing, so a dungeon would be a perfect place for this build. Now moving on, I'm using the Thruster ability, and the reason for this is because it has a shorter cooldown, and we'll be using that on the 3 bomber mods we have started on in the class armor, which will reduce our grenade cooldown when we use our thruster. So that's the reason I'm using that, so that we can get those grenades back consistently, especially when you're in a team where your pulse grenade might not damage enemies for long, so it just helps. But we're also using 2 grenade kickstart mods that will give us energy when we use our grenade, and since we're running the heavy handed mod as well, we'll create orbs of power or melee final blows, which will give us armor charge stacks to use in our grenade kickstart. And every melee kill will spawn an orb. It doesn't have to be the actual ability because our aspect allows this to happen. I would run 2 innovation mods in the leg armor though, so you really can go all out with the grenade spam, because just throwing a grenade at an enemy like a champion or boss that doesn't move and it hits them consistently, then using your thruster and picking up an orb that you've just made with your melee will give you that grenade back in seconds, compared to the 2-minute cooldown it has initially, which is just crazy. And these grenades are actually pretty good. If you really wanted to, you could run the Armentarium and take grenades to the next level, but that's up to you. I'll get to the exotic alternatives in just a moment though. But there are a few other things benefiting this build, and those are the fragments. So the other 3 we have are the Spark of Magnitude, our arc grenades have an extended duration, Spark of Recharge, while critically wounded, our melee and grenade recharge more quickly, and Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by ads, you are more resistant to incoming damage with a +10 to the strength stat. You could instead throw on a Spark of Shock so that the grenade jolts targets. This would solve all your overload problems because you'll be able to stun them and get the grenade straight back. Just don't miss or you're probably done for, but either way, not a bad fragment. Anyway, for exotic alternatives, you have Synthoceps, great for melee damage, Wormgod Cuirass, same thing, but this is kinda harder to maintain. The Point Contact, great for the Thunderclap melee if you're running variant 2. Armentarium, again good for the grenade spam. Heart of Inmost Light, great for both variants if you have nothing else to use. And then Doom Archers, because why not, right? Have a bit of fun. Ideally you want to run the Skullfort exotic, or the Cuirass if you want to make this build the most effective, but you guys just do what works for you best. It's just amazing that this build works with so many different exotics, and the only thing you need to change is either the super or melee. Everything else still works efficiently regardless, which is why I wanted to put multiple variants in this video. Now there's a few last things here, so if you're using variant 2, you just want to run 2 hands-on in a helmet so that you can get supers fast, or run 2 ashes to assets if you're going into harder content so you can get faster supers using grenades. Every other mod I haven't covered doesn't really affect this build in any way, so you can really run what you want. The dim links will be below anyway for both. Just make sure your artifact setup is the same as this, and then you'll be fine, because this doesn't save with the dim link. If you don't want to use the dim link, then feel free to copy the mod screen. So this is variant 1 for the Thundercrash, along with the Cuirass or the Fallen Star, and then this here is variant 2 for the melee and the Skullfort exotic. Weapons don't really matter, you can run what you want, but you want ideally arc weapons. I'm not currently loaded at the moment as I just swapped all my gear around, so yeah, just use arc weapons. Otherwise, stat focus, you want 100 discipline, 100 resilience, and 100 strength if you can. Ignore my 111 resilience, it's kind of funny, I know it doesn't benefit me past 100, but it's actually my minimum resilience. I physically cannot get lower with the armor that I'm running, so yeah, fun. Anyway guys, great build, great fun. You guys definitely need to give this one a try, but if you didn't like this build, then you know what's below, Season 21 build playlist. Go find your next dream build, and until then, have a good day.